next thing to say to you is that the apparatus that you should be choosing for filtration are, well, in some ways you can use a filter funnel and a flask, but you can actually use the next set of kit, which is a Buchner apparatus. So this is called a Buchner funnel. This is a Buchner flask, and it's got like a plastic ring called an O-ring. It might have a different name, but I call this an O-ring. And the apparatus fits together in this kind of way, where when you apply a suction here, a vacuum, this squashes itself down and creates a vacuum, and it sucks through. So the flask, the Buchner flask, needs to sit again in a clamped stand, because I see plenty of our students when they filter ignore that, and they have things like this on the bench, and it goes and falls over, and all the product goes and spills itself over the desk. So the one thing to say to you, that if you're doing any chemistry, you always should have a clamped stand doing anything. You can nice and secure weight it down. So make sure you put the flask in position, and you can just tighten very gently with the clamp, and you can put the O-ring on top, and the clamp doesn't disturb the position of the O-ring, it sits on nicely. Then you can put the Buchner flask on. Now today you'll have about 6 grams of solid, 7 grams. If you've got 40 grams, I think you can see without weighing anything out that's an appropriate size. So always judge your size of the funnel. If you've got half a gram, give that, or a quarter of a gram, that's possibly not the best size to use. Find something smaller, or use a separate funneling device called a push funnel. But today, this to me is the appropriate size to use. So when you're doing chemistry as well, you always have to have a think about the glassware you're getting out, because you don't want the product to just be lost in the volume of glassware somehow. So this needs a vacuum source. So on all the benches moving up, you've grey taps. Strangely at the moment, these taps, which are vacuum, are green, but moving back up the lab, there are grey taps. So when you put some tube onto the tap and you turn the tap on, you hear that kind of noise, you're creating a vacuum. So get yourself as well some thicker vacuum tubing. So there's different kinds of tubing in the lab. There's kind of condenser tubing, which is thinner vacuum tubing, so it's got like a thicker kind of arterial wall as such, and it's resistant to changes in pressure. So next thing to do before you start filtering is to get a piece of appropriate filter paper that you believe will fit into the Buchner flask. So just test it like that, and you probably might need 2 pieces of paper. So put 2 pieces of filter paper into the funnel, and with your chilled water, because when you've crystallised and you're going to wash the crystals, you make sure you have chilled water. Warmer water redissolves the salt, the solid up, if it's organic, or the inorganic salt. So take the chilled water and just wet the top of the funnel, and then what you should do is just apply a bit of vacuum like that on the end of the Buchner flask, just to suck down the water, and the filter paper now is securely in place. So when you put the crystals down, none of the crystals will come out and actually now go through these porous sinters into the flask. So I'll just show this to my ace cameraman. You can see there's lots of porous sinters in there. So then take your crystals. This is an inorganic salt, but it could be an organic salt or an organic compound, should I say. Give it a quick break up with a spatula, and then very quickly go 1, 2, 3, pour it in, and try and get as many crystals out as possible. Make sure at this point you don't overspill. If you think that's the case, hold back pouring it and get the vacuum on straight away. So put the vacuum on, suck the water down, and now you're left with some nice green crystals. You'll have more crystals than me because you took the full quantities. I just took a quarter of your quantities. So scrape crystals out, and now a good chemist with his cold water will now start to look at taking the crystals from the side of the flask and transferring it in. Now I'm using water because today's solvent is water, but if you do any organic packs where it says recrystallised from ether or ethanol, the last thing then you want to use water. You should use the salt to recrystallise from. We're using water today, so obviously water suits us quite nicely. So notice I'm only using minimum volumes. I'm just putting 1 to 2 mil in, if that. I'm breaking the mass up of crystals with the spatula. I don't want to use too much water, so this pipette amount of water is my last amount. Give it a swirl, pour in as quickly as possible. Put that in there, suck down, and it then says to wash with ethanol and ether for this one. So what we can do is just to break very gingerly up the